final season of Better Call Saul currently debuting, I thought it was a great time to go back and review each of the seasons leading up to the finale. We're in week 4, that means we're talking about season 4. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on Season 4 of Better Call Saul. This is a spoiler review, so feel free to spoil away down below in the comment section. No need for spoiler warnings. Also, I'm doing this review series right alongside my good buddy Cody Leach, and so once you've watched my review, head on over to his channel. I'll put a link right up here, and you can check out his review for Season 4 as well as the rest of the seasons of Better Call Saul. And let's get started. And by this point in time in the show, things just start getting really, really dark. And Jimmy's reached that point in time where he's stopped trying to seek redemption. He's gone full-blown into slipping Jimmy as a lawyer phase mode. And he's in total denial about that fact. And this is running parallel to this plot line with Mike and Gus's meth lab being built out with these German engineers that has its own tragic finale. You've got Nacho being held captive essentially by Gus and just being pulled through the ringer. It's a pretty brutal season on a bunch of different levels from beginning to end. I didn't even mention, it starts off with Chuck's suicide. And so, man, it is just a season that is really, really heavy. After how quickly season 3 moved, this one slows down a little bit, and while covering more time, it slows down kind of in how many plot points it kind of quickly moves through things, but it does set up a bunch of really important things that kind of moves us into the back half of the show and takes you on quite the journey. So to make our way through the main plot lines of the season, it picks up right where the last season ended with Chuck committing suicide, and thus Jimmy, Howard, Kim dealing with the sudden death of Chuck. And immediately you realize that Jimmy, after everything that happened in the last season, he legitimately has just cut off any emotional vulnerability, any humanity in the direction of his brother. It's just gone. And it leads to some of Jimmy's nastiest moments in the whole show, where in the days after the funeral, you have moments where Howard is finally actually being vulnerable and being human. And Kim interprets some of these moments a little bit differently than I did, but you have moments where finally Howard isn't looking down on Jimmy. Finally, it's like this person that was very close and dear to both of us has died, and man, what did we do to cause this? And I think it was a suicide, man. And Howard's actually vulnerable, and Jimmy's reaction every time he's interacting with Howard in this season is just cruel. Now, of course, you can look back at the previous seasons and see all the ways Howard could have been better to Jimmy and all sorts of things, but you're like literally in the aftermath of a funeral, of a death, and someone clearly is crushed at what happened, and Jimmy doesn't even, it's not even that he chooses a neutral stance. It's like he picks the thing that's gonna poke, stab Howard the worst, and Howard just lets this whole thing out of everything that's gone down, and Jimmy just goes, well, that's your cross to bear, Howard. And just boom, lays that on him. The later in the season when they run into each other and Howard has insomnia and Jimmy's like, what's bothering you? Clueless to what Jimmy, do you not know, or are you just being cruel? Because obviously you know what would be bothering him and what would lead to all of this. And then you get to an episode where Jimmy goes to HHM and the whole thing's in a really bad place, and then Jimmy is just so mean to Howard, who's in a terrible place, leading to Howard giving Jimmy an FU, and Jimmy's like, there, that energy right there, use that to rebuild this thing. And you're like, oh, Jimmy, oh, man, this is so heartless. And it would be one thing if Jimmy was acting more human in private with Kim, of like, you know, anything. What you can imagine all the ways that could have gone, of like him having a more humanity, his own response to his brother's death and dealing with it. But when you're seeing the fact that with Kim, he's like, what? You know, I moved on from my brother. You know, we didn't have a relationship anymore by the end. So he's unfazed by his brother's death, and he's being cruel to people that are affected by it. That's what kind of puts it in this kind of negative light when it's in that context that makes it so brutal. Then the other kind of thing running alongside all of this is that at the end of the season, Jimmy was suspended as a lawyer for a year, so he has to get a job. He decides to get a job, ends up getting a job selling phones. And even in this process, you see him just kind of going into that, like blatantly going into this Slippin' Jimmy version where he gets a job where he could be selling, I think it was copiers, and does this gigantic pitch to get the job, wins them over, and in the moment they're like, yeah, we'll give you the job. And then he's immediately like, you're going to hire me on the site? You don't even know me. And like, just like trashes these guys. You're like, Jimmy, what are you doing? And you realize that he's got a con in mind, that he can't do the con if he takes the job. So all for the sake of a silly little con of switching out a statue and stealing a statue, he turns down a job that probably would have been better and more satisfying than the job that he could have gotten being a salesman going to different places selling things. And instead, he ends up selling phones at a store that has no traffic. Like he as this guy that needs to be doing stuff, he needs to be in motion doing things, interacting with people, and he gets a job at a place where no one goes. And you have a couple episodes there where he's trying to figure out how to like get things in motion and make things happen and try and run some ads and stuff like that. And potentially, you know, he just has to make something happen. And his way of doing that is he comes up with this whole idea of like, what if, like, who needs private one-off phones? Criminals. What does Jimmy do? Starts selling them, and there's a little mini subplot where he gets robbed that night, and then he has to hire his buddies to like beat those guys up, and like comes up with this whole scenario where he can get away with all of this. But you see this scenario where he to make ends meet, and then also at the same time to try and have something happening. Like he just has to have something working. Has this whole side hustle selling phones to criminals in a sketchy way. And they even kind of built into this a little bit. They do a time jump where they show months and months and months pass of each of them kind of going down these paths of their frustrations with all of this, because obviously you don't want the show to run on at the pace that it had been going with him, not as a lawyer for multiple seasons, because the show tends to not jump through time quickly. In which case, they do a time jump in the middle of the season. It was like 9 months where you jump forward. And this like serves several different purposes kind of in the season at the same time. But for Jimmy, he builds this whole side deal with the phones. And then later that he does get him in a little bit of trouble. We'll come back to that. Then we got to talk about Nacho and his trouble with Gus. So at the end of the last season, Nacho poisons Hector Salamanca, hoping to kill, or doesn't poison him, switches out his medicine, hopes to set up a scenario where he would die. He doesn't die, he just has a super duper bad stroke. And this was all to protect his father, and because he doesn't like the Salamancas and how they just don't listen, so he's trying to remove the bad elements out of it. But Gus immediately figures out what's going down, and Gus, who's doing his underwater 4D chess game of master planning everything, doesn't like someone messing with his plan. So he sees this go down, and he's got his own lingering grudges over some things that have happened where Nacho, and I don't remember the other guy's name, but whenever Hector sent them to go get their drugs from Gus's guys, they demanded an extra brick. And clearly Nacho wasn't crazy about this, but he had to go along with it too. He wasn't the one driving, and he wasn't the one snarky about it, but he did his part, grabbed his gun, and was part of the process of taking an extra brick. And so you see Nacho and that guy go to get another brick. They go in there, and demand another one. Like, hey, we're not going to change anything. We're going to see how things go. And once again, things get heated, things get all messed up. And you're like, oh man, what are these guys doing? This is probably not a good idea right here without the force of the Salamancas behind them. Then it shows them walking out, leaving. And the Nacho's partner in this starts making all these snarky comments about those guys. They were so afraid. We pulled out the gun. Man, those guys, they don't know who they're messing with. They don't know. We're way better than them. Then out of the blue, bag goes over his head. Hands are tied behind his back. And Nacho just has to sit there and watch as this guy suffocates with a bag over his head. You're like, whoa, this got serious real fast. That escalated really, really, really quickly. And immediately to cover up everything that happened at the beginning of the next episode, they take Nacho out in a car, have him in a car accident, blow off his friend's head, shoot Nacho twice in ways that potentially definitely could kill him. And then Nacho doesn't die, but like his life has just become the absolute worst. Of like, he thought that Tuco was bad and crazy. So he tried to do some stuff to get rid of Tuco, and then that escalates things because of everything that went down with Mike. And the escalation of that leads to him trying to take out Hector. He thinks that'll solve his problems. And then that leads to literally his friend getting killed in front of him. And his friend essentially had it coming, was playing a very stupid game. But his friend gets killed. He gets shot twice. And now he's slave to Gus, who's making all this happen and clearly does not have his best interest in mind. And you just see Nacho stuck in this horrible, horrible place where a crazy man, Chicken Man, knows the information that can get him killed and could kill him himself. And he's just stuck in this scenario. And you just see him kind of escalated in the Salamanca family, where he's now in the role that Hector was in, and the guy that he beat up is now the place in his position. He's moving up the ranks and hating every moment of it. Our other big storyline here, you've got Mike and Gus's project. So Gus is trying to, the writers are trying to get Gus to where he was when he shows up in Breaking Bad, which is having this huge secret lair infrastructure, all these things in place. And how does he build his secret drug kingpin while not getting caught by the police and not being caught by the Salamancas? It has to be super duper secretive. Well, Gus isn't terribly happy with Mike because he pretty quickly figures out that Mike knew what Nacho was going to do and let it happen and didn't warn him. And it doesn't overly play this hand of did Mike was willingly help with this project? Did he have to be pressured or anything like that? But it's introduced this huge project as what you did wrong. And then Mike goes, well, what's your ask? And then the ask turns out to be, you're going to run this very big, like, gigantic, long project, building out this secret lair. And this is also a way, like, it seems like they're always trying to figure out, struggling a little bit to figure out what to do with Mike in some of those windows of going from parking attendant that does some side jobs that are illegal to, okay, now he's definitely working for Gus, but he's not on the payroll of Gus. So like, there's this odd little thing where he's like laundering money through this other company, and therefore Mike being Mike wants the cover to feel real. So then he's going off and like inspecting buildings under this fake job that he has as part of his cover. And it was just like, it seems like they had to do something with Mike that felt in character, but you couldn't have that linger too long. You can't have Mike doing things like that for 7 seasons. You do it twice and it's like, yeah, that's such a Mike thing to do. But that's all you can do with it. And so then this is like the way that you cover that up, of like, give him a project that's like his full-time job with Gus is running this huge, gigantic, long-running secret lab project. And this is probably my favorite aspect of this season. Is interesting. Like, how do drug kingpins build out their layers and all the things that go into that? And so they show them bringing in multiple, one guy that doesn't get hired and then the guy that does get hired, and they're trying to find someone that understands how hard of a task this is and is realistic about it, and how secretive it would be, and all the things that they have to do to shield what they're doing and keeping these people underground in a secret lair, and how do you keep them from going crazy. And in the process, because there's the time jump and 9 months go by, you have Mike making friends with this guy in there, but Mike's ultimate job is to do Gus's bidding, and Gus is not looking to make friends. And you think one person's going crazy in the bunch, but it turns out it's actually a different guy in the bunch is the one that really ends up going crazy in it, and it's the main guy. And so then they let the guys have a little bit of R&R to unwind and get normal, and the main guy starts talking about what they're doing a little bit, letting things out. And then the next day he's like, I need to talk to my wife. Can I go see her? Can I see? I've never been away from this long. Clearly he's snapping. Like, he's not living in this isolation well. And it leads to a deal where he decides to escape just to go see his wife. And whether he full blown in the whole process of all of this never realized who he's working for, or if he kind of knew at the beginning, kind of essentially knew, but in the 9 months of solitude, just convinced himself, Mike's my friend, Mike's my friend, Mike's my friend. My friend will be mad at me, but it'll be okay. I don't know. It seemed like he always had some of these guys that later, what's the guy's name? Galen, I think is his name. That's much bigger character in Breaking Bad, but you get introduced in the season. Seems like there's a certain naivety to some of these people that they just love their work. They're not interested, they're not really even interested in the glory and the fame and all that. They just love their work and challenges, and someone affirming them, they get interested in that, and they don't think about the implications of the world that they're getting into. And I think you see that with this German guy, that he doesn't seem to have any of the cruelty of the normal people that are in the world of drug empires. He just loves engineering and challenges, and seems old-fashioned and folksy. Doesn't seem to really know what he's doing in the scheme of the moral implications of it and the danger that he's actually in and all of this. Just like, I can make money solving a problem. Oh, I'm going crazy being in here. Thus, he runs away. And I didn't touch on this before, but in our Salamanca adventure, Lalo is introduced. And I love this character. I think that this guy, I guess this was his, I guess he's done a lot of acting in non-English speaking films, I believe is my understanding. And then I think Breaking Bad might be one of his first high profile English speaking projects. And as best I could tell, that went so well for him that he was cast in Hawkeye. And I loved him in Hawkeye too. But I think this guy is just so good at being super charming while being like, this guy's dangerous. I don't trust this guy at all. But man, he's got a great smile, doesn't he? I love Lalo. So he gets introduced as this guy that's trying to figure out what's up. Like, what's going on here? And he's really, the guy that he seems best connected with is Hector. And it's fascinating because he's almost like, he's like right on the same wavelength. Him and Hector, like they jive, and especially as you go into the later seasons, they jive totally. But personality-wise, they're opposites. Like Hector has like zero charisma, zero likability. He's just like an angry, nasty guy that's powerful, so people have to do what he says, and just gives off this angry energy. And then you have Lalo, who gives off this like, hey, energy, but they're both equally dangerous. Two different energies, both sociopaths at their core and very dangerous. Lalo's such a fun addition to the show. And so then he's like trying to eye Gus's enterprise. He doesn't trust Gus at all. So he's trying to figure out what Gus is up to. All of this while, German engineer guy makes a run for it. And so all of Gus's guys, in particular Mike, have to like go into investigation mode. So that's easy for Lalo to spot. Something's up. Like, what's going on here? When they're just doing normal day-to-day, it's not obvious that something fishy's going on. And as soon as everybody's like running around, phone calls, you can spot something's up. And so then he figures it out and then starts going to the different places where everything was taking place. And throughout the process of it, is able to intercept a phone call from the German guy, or get the German guy on the phone and trick him into giving some information. And gets information that Gus really does not want a Salamanca to hear any of those words. It's nothing specific enough to really know what's going on, but just him knowing something's going on. Very, very bad for Gus and everything that Gus has been trying to avoid. But Mike gets to our German friend, and Mike has to do... It's almost like where you really see this arc that Mike has been on. Season 2 Mike, he's not going to kill Tuco. He's not ready to pull the trigger on Tuco. And Tuco is a legitimate bad person. A dangerous person, a crazy person, a drugged out person. And Mike won't pull the trigger on that guy because he doesn't want to do that. And then you go along this journey to here, where Mike is going to pull the trigger on a guy that seems like a decent guy, that if anything is just naive. Deeply, deeply naive, in over his head, and doing a project that just he actually wasn't up for. On a psychological level of the isolation, the away from his wife. He wasn't up for how extreme this was. And because of that, he makes this terrible choice to run. And Mike is going to have to now kill that guy. And they're friends. And they've been chatting in these honest, real kind of chats. And now Mike... talking with the guy, and the guy doesn't get it. Like, can you please just let me see my wife? Like, I know I'm in big trouble. I know I'm in big trouble, and you're going to be mad at me, but just let me see my wife before she leaves. And the guy's so clueless, so unbelievably clueless of like, dude, you're about to die. And he's literally still talking about getting to see his wife. And he's like, if you can get your wife to leave, we're not going to kill her. That's where this is at. And it's like it finally clicks in his head like, oh, this is the last time I'm going to talk to my wife and I have to yell at her and be mean to her. Wow. Oh dear. And it's like it finally sinks in. And at least he's respectful enough in this moment to like walk off and allow himself to like not fight Mike or anything. Like he acknowledges like, wait, Mike's been warning me about this a long time. Okay. And Mike has to pull the trigger and kill his friend. And we know behind the scenes, Mike did everything he could to try and stop this outcome with the guy, with Gus. But it's like Mike doesn't say any of those things. He doesn't like say, I'm sorry. He doesn't say, I tried. It's like he just has to let it be a Band-Aid right off and shoots him in the back of the head. And finally, we have the closeout of our Jimmy plotline. So his pickpocket buddy is hired as kind of his defender person, and he accidentally punches a cop. So it leads to this whole plot line where that guy is about to go to jail, and Jimmy doesn't want the guy to go to jail because the guy's not going to go to jail. He's going to run. And he feels guilty about this because the guy was always helping him out, and it was a legitimate misunderstanding that just looks really, really, really bad. So Kim, who is not happy that Jimmy's been running this side business, agrees to do this whole, help him with the trial and run this whole scheme of writing letters from across the United States to get this guy off the hook. And it ends up working where they just flood the DA's office and the judge's office with letters, multiple lawyers, all this stuff, and they win. The guy gets off, and Kim is just like, does all this hard work for Jimmy, helping Jimmy out. And then, but she's not happy with him. And Jimmy knows she's not happy with him. And then right after this is Jimmy's 1 year mark of where he goes in to get his license back as a lawyer. And in his hearing, whatever it is, the interview, he never mentions his brother, which obviously is weird. And so he freaks out afterwards and calls Kim, I need you to talk to you. So he starts yelling at Kim immediately when she's like, wait, how did they respond when you mentioned Chuck? And he's like, why would I mention Chuck? Chuck's not a part of my life. Unable to see, like, Jimmy, this is freaking weird. You didn't bring up your brother, that you were lost your license or whatever over your brother. and your interactions with him, and then he died right afterwards. What do you mean you didn't bring up your brother? And Jimmy's like, what? Why would I bring him up? He's not a part of my life. So Kim's like saying the obvious thing, telling him the truth, not what he wants to hear. And Jimmy is, as far as I know in the whole series, the nastiest he's ever been to Kim. Where he's like, you just see slipping, Jimmy. It's on your face right there. You don't believe me. She's like, I just was your lawyer. I'm always there for you. I'm here right now. I sent those letters. I could be convicted of a felony. I'm right here. But you didn't mention your brother. That's freaking weird, man. And Jimmy won't snap, doesn't snap out of it in the moment. And then they kind of make better afterwards. And so she works with him to you have to make them believe that you actually care about your brother. So they concoct all this stuff where he's goes to his brother's headstone on the 1-year anniversary of his death, just so people will see him, and makes a donation for a charity and goes to the scholarship fund just to make appearances. And then he goes to his hearing and gives this just tremendous epic speech about his brother and what his brother meant to him, and was going to read the letter his brother wrote him, but doesn't, and just riffs this whole thing about their complicated relationship and how great he was and how difficult it is to live up to his reputation, but he really wants to, and he wishes that he had said the things to his brother that his brother was able to see him. And you see Kim in the background tearing up a little bit. She's like, wow, Jimmy gave a sincere answer. And then as they're leaving, immediately, they don't even leave the building, and Jimmy's like, those suckers. One of them was even crying. You can see on Kim's face, he didn't mean any of that? What? And that's the pain of this show sometimes, if you're just watching the tragedy of the unfold of Jimmy just descending into the worst version of himself. He learned nothing. He grew, but in the bad direction, or got worse, whatever you want to call that. So the show, this season was, I think, better than seasons 1 and 2. Not as good as season 3. Just 'cause I love that kind of some of the plot lines in here. Does slow down a little bit, but maybe kind of tied with season 1. I'm not sure which one will be on top in my ranking, but once again, great writing. Slowed down a little bit, maybe a little bit too much. A lot of tragedy, a lot of heartbreak in this season. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.